Hello students, I welcome you in this session, and in the last session we were discussing about group and group dynamics. We discussed how groups are formed and what kind of different forces among groups are responsible for various kind of behaviors in the organization, and how the individual and group behavior have impact on each other, and then how the behavior can be corrected as per need of proper organizational functioning. In today's session, we will discuss with one of very significant topic of organizational behavior, that is learning. Learning is a topic which can be understood among different disciplines like psychology, social sciences, organizational behavior, and there are number of other subject areas where learning is understood. But learning is a very significant factor in organizational behavior. Simply, if we discuss about learning, learning is very important from the beginning of life to the end of life. Without learning, the existence and survival of human beings, even animals, is not possible. So, learning is not important for organizational functioning only, learning is important for the existence of individual, groups and society at large, and especially in the organizational behavior. Without learning, the organizational functioning is not possible, because organization functions by the use of knowledge, skills, abilities and competencies by the individuals and groups. So, if someone does not have any knowledge, any skill, any ability or competency working anywhere in the professional life, in the organizational life, also in the personal life, would be very difficult. So, learning is a very significant element of organizational functioning. Before we go in the detailed understanding of learning, let us first try to understand the meaning of learning. And as per Encyclopedia of Britannica, learning is the alteration of behavior as a result of individual experience. Basically, in this meaning, one of the very important part is alteration in the behavior, and second one is as a result of experience. So, whatever is experienced by the organism, as a result of that, if there is change in the behavior, that is learning, or in other words, if new change in the form of knowledge, in the form of skill, in the form of ability, in the form of competency has happened in the behavior of individual as a result of experience, it means the learning has not taken place. Another meaning given by Merriam-Webster's dictionary is knowledge, skill acquired by instructions or study, that is also considered as learning. Means whenever a person acquires knowledge, skill, modification in behavior, understanding, that is also known as learning, and this particular meaning relates to the education of the person. So, if we want to educate a person, in the education of person, certainly person will either acquire some knowledge, some skill or change in behavior, only then learning will happen. And this is directly related to the organizational behavior. As I told you in the beginning that without knowledge, without skill, without ability and competency, it is difficult to work in the organization. It may be any kind of very petty work to a very big assignment. We can take example, a person working in the office as an office boy to assist the official for day to day work, or a person involved in fabrication of a ship vessel. The fabrication of a ship vessel is really a mega task, whereas a person who is supporting as assistant in the office to the official has got not very comprehensive set of task or work, but in both the cases without knowledge, basic skill and basic ability, performance is not possible. And these knowledge, skill and abilities are acquired as a process of learning, and this learning is consequence of education of the people. So, the Merriam-Webster's dictionary emphasizes on that. And again the dictionary has also mentioned about modification of behavior as a result of experience, which we have already discussed. So, this is meaning of learning. Now, moving ahead, which particular, whether it is human being only or other animals can also learn. So, the learning is a process which is significant not only for human beings, animals and even certain plants learn, and all different kind of living beings have capability of learning up to some extent. Only then, as I told you, that survival and existence is possible. If we take example of plants, then how their propagation of species happens and how they are growing. It is there in the seed, it is there in the genetics of trees that they have different mode of spreading of their seeds from one place to other. Some of the fruits have become very sweet, others have got very fine fins, and because of sweetness animals will eat, and then the seeds will spread over a vast area on earth, whereas the second one where the seed is inbuilt with the fins will fly with the air and will spread over very vast area, and this is there in the genetics of the seeds of plants, and this is also considered as a kind of learning. So, learning happens among human beings, animals, plants and other kind of living beings. Now, to understand learning in a better way, let us go through some of very important definitions given by renowned experts and authors. The very first definition given by Buchanan, and the definition is the process of acquiring knowledge through experience which leads to a lasting change in behavior. Here the process of learning is it acquires knowledge through experience, and that experience is lasting in nature. It will not very easily eradicate, or it will not delete out from the memory of the living beings. Another definition given by Lewin is the learning as the direct cognitive organization of a situation. Motivation has a significant role and place in learning. So, according to Lewin, it is direct cognitive organization. Cognitive means mental processes. Mental processes means it is process of sensation, perception, imagination, focus, concentration, and all these are reorganized or organized in a particular way as a result of experience of a situation and as a result of motivation, that learning takes place. Another definition given by Pavlov is learning is habit formation resulting from conditioning. Yes, it is process of formation of habit, and this habit formation is as a result of conditioning. We will discuss about conditioning in the later part of this session, so that we can understand it in detail. And one of most popular definition of learning is process of change in behavior as a result of experience, and this change is a relatively permanent change. So, we can say that learning is a relatively permanent change in behavior as a result of experience, and this relatively permanent change behavior means learning is not something like once it has happened and very quickly it will delete down from the memory. Learning is a relatively permanent change. Once learning has happened, it will bring a kind of permanent change in behavior. Let us try to understand it with the help of an example. If you have learnt how to ride a bike, so once you have learnt riding the bike, it means it will become relatively permanent change in your behavior. As and when you will try to ride the bike, that learning will be there. But suppose for the last many years you have not taken a ride on the bike, and as a result of that there is slight extinction of the learning, and this extinction of learning means you might be bit worried whether you would be able to ride on the bike or not, but once you will ride and you will start driving the bike, after 1 or 2 rides you will reach to the same level of learning what was it in the initial state. So, because of that learning is a relatively permanent change in behavior. Now, after understanding the meaning, the purpose and the definitions of learning, let us try to conclude this concept of learning, and in conclusion we need to understand that learning is a mental process. Learning happens as a result of cognitive and mental processes. It is not something physical. Yes, it is as a consequence, as a result of certain physical and non-physical, virtual and non-virtual activities, but ultimately it is a mental process. And this mental process happens as a result of stimulus response process. Stimulus response process means there should be something which will disturb the state of organism. Organism means, let us take example of a human being. A human being is well satisfied, contented and in the state of equilibrium, but suddenly there is decline in the temperature. This decline in temperature is very high and the temperature has reached to the degree of 3 to 4 degrees. So, that temperature will affect the organism or individual, and as a result of that the individual will try to adjust with the environment. So, this adjustment will be as a result of learning process, but this learning has happened as a result of stimulus, and in the present example the stimulus is decline in the temperature. So, learning is a stimulus response process. Next element of learning is change and modification in behavior. Learning is a stimulus response process which happens in the mental or cognitive faculty of individual, and this will result in the change and modification in the behavior. It is permanent. Once somebody has learned how to prepare chapati, once person has learned that, now it is permanent. So, a stimulus which generated a response, and as a result of that certain mental processes happened, and as a result of those mental processes the change in the behavior or modification in the behavior of individual happens, and that this change may be negative or positive in nature, but it is permanent. Not only that, organization of behavior by organism as a result of experience is also one of element of learning. Means learning will organize the behavior or reorganize when it is a new change. Someone has learnt newly the riding of motorbike, that is a relatively permanent change in behavior as a result of experience, whereas already a person was well learnt in riding the motorbike, but some of the new features have come, and the person has learnt how to use these new features. This is a kind of modification in the behavior. So, whether it is modification or a new change, it is always as a result of some experience. Means some experience has happened, and consequently if there is change in the behavior and that change is a permanent change in behavior, then it is another element of learning. And learning is always a newly attained, understood or acquired concept or phenomena or process or understanding, whatever it may be, but it should always be new. If already you have learned something and you are doing that thing as you had learnt it, then it is not a learning. But if any new dimension has added to the behavior, that is the learning. And next is the process of learning starts from conception and continues up to the time of death. Someone is conceived by the mother from there itself, because the sperm has to reach to the egg, and after uniting together, then it has to reach a specific part of the body of mother, and there it has to grow and adjust with the environment, and then gradually after maturity and growth of the fetus, now it is time to take birth, and from birth to the point of death, the process of learning goes on continuously, or in other words it is a lifelong process. So, this is about learning, and why we are talking about learning in the organizational behavior. Already I told you that organizational working is possible as a result of use and practice of knowledge and skills for performance of a task and job, and this learning is possible as a result of acquisition of knowledge, skill and abilities. So, without knowledge, skill and ability, functioning in organization is not possible. So, learning has direct impact on behavior, and already I told you that learning may be positive or negative, but it is permanent in nature. If an employee has learnt something positive, constructive, that will help the organization to attain its goal in an easy manner. But if employee has learnt something negative and destructive, then it is going to hamper the attainment of organizational goal. So, learning has direct impact or permanent impact on the behavior, and behavior has direct relationship with organizational goal attainment. Because in one of the session I shared with all of you that there are certain set of behaviors which are supportive in the attainment of organizational objectives and goals, whereas there are certain behaviors which are hampering in the attainment of organizational goal. And the example is punctuality, working with sincerity and loyalty. These are the behaviors, whereas involvement in such kind of activities which are not productive in nature, or if employees are involved in counterproductive work behavior, that will badly impact the functioning of organization. So, learning has direct impact on behavior, and behavior has direct impact on attainment of organizational goals. So, it is very important to understand the process of learning, so that the behavior of people can be modified for appropriate behavior, for acquiring such skills which will help for performance of work. Now, this learning happens as a result of a cyclic process, and that cyclic process is very first there will be stimulus. There will be stimulus either from within the individual or intrinsic in the nature, or the stimulus come from the environment. So, there will be a stimulus, and that stimulus will be reason for motivation. This stimulus will move the organism to initiate the process of learning, and this stimulus will ignite the reaction, and this reaction, as I gave you example, that if the temperature is declining very speedily, that person will start feeling cold, and to protect from the cold, the individual has to react, and reaction is to wear the warm cloth. So, stimulus will ignite the reaction, and reaction will move the organism to act upon the environment, so that the best adjustment can be ensured. So, in the simple word, learning is an instrument. Learning is an instrument of modifying the behavior, and this is as a result of motivation. So, stimulus results in the reaction, and reaction motivates or moves the organism to act upon, and this action on the part of organism will result into the reward. Again, let us take the same example. The temperature has gone down. As a result of that, there is reaction in the body of organism or individual to protect himself. The individual get motivated, or individual moves to protect, and in this process of movement, wearing of warm cloth is a kind of reward. Now, the protection is there. Another example is as I told you, that stimulus may come from the environment or from within. The example of declining of temperature is from the environment, whereas if the organism or individual is hungry, so that stimulus of hunger will come from within. So, once someone is hungry, the stimulus of hunger will be there, and that stimulus will force the organism to react, to move upon, and that reaction and movement will be for acquisition of food or for taking the food, and then the organism will manage the food from environment, and this food is a kind of reward. So, learning is a cyclic process, and this process is not only for the basic need of human being. Another example can be taken from the organizational working. For the last many years, an employee was working, and suddenly there is change in the technology, and this change in technology is a kind of stimulus, and that will result into the reaction. Reaction means either to quit the job or if you want to continue on the job, there is need to learn the new technology or new skills, and individuals or organisms movement for learning this will help in the acquisition of new knowledge, new skill, new ability, new competency, and this is a kind of reward, and this reward will help again to perform the task. So, learning is a cyclic process. Now, there are different factors which will affect the learning. The very first one is the physiological factor. Actually, learning is a mental process, but ultimately it affects or it got affected by the physical functions or actions of body, the neural functions, neural reorganization, neural stimulation, and then storage of learnt knowledge, skill, ability or competency in the memory is also by mental cognitive process as well as neurobiological process also. So, learning is a physiological factor, and why we should try to understand this physiological factor. If you want to enhance learning, if you want to make learning appropriate, for that there is need of a specific kind of physiological state of individual. So, this is a physiological factor, and next one is psychological factor. Yes, already I explained you that mental and cognitive process. So, it is your sensation, perception, imagination, your focus, concentration, your memory part, all they are the psychological. Yes, environmental factors, as I told you that stimulus may come from the environment or from within. So, environment has also an important role in that, and last one is the what kind of learning process or what kind of teaching methodology has been used, that is also one of the factor. So, another other factor, the genetics, emotional, how individual is involving in the learning process, what kind of experience had, what type of environment is there, what is prior knowledge, how much individual is motivated, what are socio-economic status. These are also some of the factors for learning. Basic objective of learning are increased in reference of organizational behavior or in reference of organizational functioning. The learning helps in increasing the employee performance and gives stronger workforce. It helps in the alignment of organizational goals. It boosts up the motivation and engagement. So, these are some of the major objectives, and yes, there are certain type of learning in organizational behavior, and those are the skill learning, perceptual learning, conceptual learning, associative learning, attitudinal learning, learning of principles and learning of problem solving, decision making. These are some type of learnings which are mandatory for organizational behavior, and learning can happen among learners as a result of visual learning. There are certain learners who can learn by using the vision or visualizing the situations, happenings and phenomena. Other learners are auditory, those who can learn by listening, and third is kinesthetic. Kinesthetic means learning by doing. So, these are three different type of learners. So, basically for effective learning there are certain laws, the law of readiness, and readiness means both the learner and the person who is involved for giving the learning, both should be ready. And yes, without practice or exercise learning is not possible, and once someone is ready and practiced, that will make an effect, and this effect will bring the primacy, intensity and recency of learning. So, this is all for this session, and in the next session we will talk about the theories of learning. For this session, this is all, and I think you might have understood the basic concept of learning of organizational behavior. Thank you for the patient learning. Thank you very much.